I've about got the 426 Hemi crate motor block ready to go except for the final honing. It was interesting on the cam bores. Remember when I measured them, they were all a half a thou under the tight spec except one which was a thou tight. So I was dreading having to do all that, but it got kind of weird. I thought I'd clean up the cam bores to work on them so I don't scratch my hands all up, and I was going to clean them up with this 2-inch ball hone. And it gets it all clean in there and deburrs the sides and all of this right here and everything. Well, what happened was, you remember how this was real bad vinyl record groove? I mean, it was very loud when I run my finger across it. What happened was that ball hone won't normally take out any metal in any, I mean, you wouldn't want to try to do that. That's not the way. But because it was just taking off the top of the peaks of the record player groove, after I pulled the ball hone out, every one of them was in spec except that one that was a thou under. It was still a quarter of a thou under. And I thought, wow. So I put the cam bearings in it and tried the cam. The cam turn's fine, so everything's wonderful. That wouldn't have worked under normal situation because it's smooth, flat metal, and that ball hone's not going to do what you want. But because you were just taking the peaks off of those grooves, it worked. That was very weird, but it worked. So now the pistons are supposed to be here next week. So the new pistons are a little heavier than the old pistons, but the pins are a little lighter than the old pins. So a reciprocating weight, you got the reciprocating that's going up and down, and then you got the rotating that's going round and round, which is the big end of the rod, and the bearing and everything. But it looks like it may work out as a match, or maybe get close enough where I could do the work. And then we really need to check the rod balance and make sure that's the same. We don't know how good a balance job the factory did, so now we're second guessing everybody. If this was a later serial number and been one of the ones that Ray Barton built, then we wouldn't have any questions. We'd know it was good, and all we'd have to do is match the combination of the piston, pin, keepers, weight to what came out of it, and we would know that our balance is perfect. But there's just a lot of questions. I don't know what to do. If we have to rebalance, which you normally always have to do when you're changing pistons, this dramatically, not boring 5 over or something like that. You can match those pistons if they're a little heavier, easy. But it's just a lot to think about. If we have to rebalance, it's going to cost money. It's going to be a long drive to wherever I go to drop the crank off. It's going to be a long wait to get it, and then it's going to be a long drive back to pick it up. So I don't know. We've got some ciphering to do. When the pistons get here, we'll think more about that. But I think we ought to look at the rods now and see how well they're balanced. Let's go over there and look. Wow, some of these are unbelievably amazing. 900 with a 0, 900 with a 0, 900 with a 0, 900 with a 0, 900 with a 0. One of them is 901 with a 0. One of them is 901 with a 7. I don't know. I find that pretty incredible. 901 with a 3. So if that one was 7/10 of a gram lighter, that'd all be within a gram. Well, that one's a little over too, 3/10. I call that pretty good. I can't really complain. And the piston and the pins and the rings. And then there's keepers too, but I don't know, it all looks pretty good to me. If the pistons are going to get here next week, I'm going to be ready to hone that thing. And so it's time to think about getting the home prepped. Now you probably can't see it in this video, but that stone has got some taper to it. If you're in the middle of a honing job and you've got plenty of metal to remove, this is no big deal. You can work around that, or you can actually take a roughing stone and cut that high side down and make it the same across here. But you know, then it's going to take a little bit for it to get set back in to where you want it. But we've only got a thou or two to work with here. We've got to straighten the bore, and we've got to get the finish we want with only a thou or two to work with. So I really want the deck stacked in my favor. I don't really want to fight trying to do it with tapered stones. I'd rather just put new ones in. I know I go through a lot of stones the way I do it, but when you're trying to hit numbers dead on, and you're working in tenths, it's, you kind of need to get things going in your favor. So I think I'll change these stones out and then check the guides also. And that way, when the pistons get here, I'll be ready to go to work. Even though we're probably going to be waiting on a balance job, I'm going to be anxious to get something done. This is not too tough of a job. You set the stone holder in here. You have a little window down here, and you slide it. Right now it says in. That means you're installing a stone. If you want to take it out, you push it that way, and the little window says out. And the stone's out. Now to place a new stone in, make sure there's no trash underneath it. If there's any trash under there, that's bad. Slide the window back to where it says in. Now I believe these stones are symmetrical and you can put them in either way. They have the part number on the end, the prefix and the suffix. I always put it in where the suffix is sticking out when I'm installing it. Now you wiggle this and make sure you're down good. You've got it on in. You're holding it down with your fingers. And that's all there is to it. Now you look underneath it and see if you see a gap in between the holder and the stone. And it's going to happen to you sooner or later. You weren't holding it down good or something went wrong, and you'll see a little gap there. And all you can do is take it out and throw it away because you've ruined it. You can only install these once. The way you saw how hard it was to pull, those teeth in there are gripping the side of that, and they're cutting in a groove for this holder to hold the stone. So if you mess it up, just forget it, throw it away, and do it all over again. This stone is what they would call an industrial length stone. Normally this is an automotive length. So what that means is the industrial one is longer. But this is what Dark recommends on their blocks, and I find that it works real good on the Mopar Mega blocks. So all we have to do is take this stone over to the bench grinder, mark it with a Sharpie, and grind it down and make it look like that. When I said that these are symmetrical, these are, but you can't install one of these backwards, because if you do, you know what that means. Throw it away. Those teeth have cut their groove, and it's not going to get tight enough if you try to turn it around and put it back in. No, you can't do that. So that's all there is to installing stones. In a previous episode, there was a viewer that asked in the comments if I would show some of the measuring equipment, and that episode I was using the dial bore gauge, so I assume that's the one he's talking about. And I answered him back, and I told him that I'd made a video of that previously, but then I got to thinking about it, and there's been a lot of new viewers since then, and so this is probably worth going back over. But this is the Sunnon dial bore gauge that's one of mankind's greatest inventions for us. And to use it, and by the way, this also pertains to the dial bore gauge for the main bores. The only difference is you have this lever here that retracts your measuring portion in order for you to slide it into the main bore and to check that. Once you get it in, you slowly let it out, and then it starts riding in the material, but you have to have a way to retract it to get down in the deep holes. So this setup that I'm showing you is either way. You use this lever to retract, and they both use the same probes and everything. And so if we want to use the dial bore gauge, we got to set it up first for the proper size hole that we're measuring. Since this block is 425, you use a 7 plus a 2. And so this extension has a 7 on it somewhere, right there, and it'll have a 2 on here, right there. So we know that this is the proper extension for what we're about to do. You only have to get it hand tight, but you do have to check it as you do your work, especially when you get down close to the end. And I come back and check it again on the setting fixture, which is what we'll look at next. If the Sunnon dial bore gauge is the greatest invention, this is even better. This is the Sunnon setting fixture for the dial bore gauge. So to set it up, we're going for, these pistons are 3 overs, so 4.253. So to get 4 inches of it, we'll use this standard here. Supposed to wipe the end off with your finger in case there's any dust on it. That's 4 inches. Now this micrometer is direct reading in tenths of a thousandths. The little ticks on the thimble are 25, or that's on the barrel, isn't it? But they're 25, so we're going to get 4.2, and then 2 ticks is 50, and then we're going to turn this till we get to 3. And then if you're over 40, you take this and get it perfect. There's a way to mount that on there, but I hate admitting that I need them, you know, kind of an old age thing. All right, we're set for 4.253. Now we've got our dial bore gauge. Let me come around here. I backed you up a little bit so we can get a good view. You loosen this up to where you can turn this and adjust it when you get it in here. You slide it in. Okay. They would like you to get at least one revolution. We didn't exactly get that, so we need to go a little this way. In reality, when you're honing, you would prefer that to be down here. I'm going to go a little more then. Now I'll tighten that a little bit, that little lock nut. And then we will just rotate our bezel. Get it dead on zero. And then test this a couple of times. Make sure that you are where you think you are. Okay. When we get pistons, we'll be ready to go.